And now, back to the Dr. A Show with your host, Dr. Will Aguila.
Hey, and welcome back to the show. Our first guest today is Mary Roach, author of Gulp, Adventures on the Alimentary Canal. The book is a potpourri of amazing facts about digestion and the strange stories that go with it. So, Mary, what about the small intestine? What happens there?
The small intestine is where you absorb all the good nutrients in the slurry that the stomach has passed along. The stomach, gets it to a liquidy state, and then it goes into the small intestine. And I think we were talking about this a little bit before. It's covered with, it's like terry cloth. It's the same, you know how terry cloth has those little loops of cloth. That, of course, makes the fabric very, very absorbent. It increases the surface area available for absorbing, in that case, water. But in the small intestine, you've got these little villi, and they're all covered. It's all this surface area available for absorption. So it really does kind of look like terry cloth or velvet, one of those very lush, thick fabrics with a lot of surface area, and that enables the body to take in all those good nutrients in the food.
Now, do you have any strange stories of the small intestine?
The small intestine, I don't have a lot of strange stories about. No, you probably have plenty.
They're worms that can live in there, ascaris, and these little worms that people can take in, and with in certain countries where these parasites are common, and even in this country it's happened. And you can eat something and ingest these worms, and the larvae kind of start to grow in there, and they fill these intestines. They can fill that intestine with these long white worms. And people can eat and eat and eat, and they get very, very thin, and that's why people say, "What, do you have a worm in your intestines or in your stomach?" Because you can eat and eat and eat and not gain any weight, and eventually they come out through your nose. They come out through your nose or through your bottom. Yeah, isn't that pretty?
Oh.
So.
And where are they from? Eating raw fish, or where are they from?
No, you know what? I would have to look that up. I don't remember. Yeah. That's really far back in medical school, but I do remember what it looks like. And believe me, you don't forget once you see it. So those of you listening, just look that up: intestinal tapeworms, and knock yourself out. That's as much as I know about it.
Tapeworms. Oh, it's tapeworms. Whoa.
Well, and you have the roundworms too, which I believe they're called ascaris. But ascaris, anyway, and they're nasty. But that's what can happen, and what they'll do is they'll feed on what you eat, and
right.
You're feeding them and making them bigger. So. Yeah,
I remember speaking to a woman who was an expert in the parasites that you can catch from sushi, and we were talking. We got on the subject of tapeworms, and she said the good thing about it is that you get to use the royal pronoun we. I kind of like that.
Well, I guess so. There's something good about it. Now, let's switch to the ultimate, the colon, or as we sometimes call it, Big Stinky. What is the colon good for?
Stinky. Well, the colon is a lot of absorption of water, just drying out of the colon. When the small intestine has taken what it can, there's material that that isn't broken down there, and it gets passed along to the colon. So all of your fibers and things that weren't absorbed up in the small intestine, it's kind of like the compost pile in a way. It's the woody bits that aren't going to be absorbed, and those add bulk, which is good for the moving stuff along. It absorbs water, and if you don't hold on to it too long, it should come out in a nice consistency. If you're very constipated and you're holding it in, too much water gets absorbed, right, and then you've got kind of a hard. On the Bristol stool scale, a number 1, which you don't want.
Well, it could be a real screamer, right?
Oh, yeah.
But it can also go the other way when you're sick and it doesn't absorb the water as it should because the lining has become inflamed. Guess what? You get diarrhea. And
that's right.
All kidding aside, that's kind of how that happens. And because the colon is trying to flush whatever is causing that out, and that's you have to keep up with your fluids because it does a really great job of it if you've ever had diarrhea. Now, when the colon when the colon gets sick, and I mean chronically sick with lots of illnesses and stuff, it can affect the whole body, can it?
Sure. I mean, I mostly cover the healthy system, so, but yeah, I mean, you're talking about which particular
Well,
illness.
the reason I'm bringing this up is because, yes, when the colon gets sick, it can really affect the whole body, and toxins can pile up, and you can get a bunch of issues. But there's something you mentioned in the book which I find very interesting, and that's called a fecal transplant. Tell us what that is.
Sure. A fecal transplant, well, it's kind of like what its name suggests. It is a transplantation of one person's healthy microbiome, as they say, one person's colon bacteria in the material that it's in is waste. So that's you're taking somebody's daily excretion and processing it. You're not sterilizing it because you want the bacteria. You're basically putting it in a blender and putting it into a form which it can be introduced into the sick person's colon. And when someone it's been used very successfully.
That's by the other end, right? Not the top end, the bottom.
That's correct.
Right?
That's the process that I saw was through the rectum, up into all the way up to the ileocecal, but all the way up to the end of the large intestine.
There are a lot of people listening right now that are getting very grossed out, but just keep going. Go ahead.
It sounds like something from a horror movie, but and if it makes it easier, we can use the word bacteria therapy, which is also what people call fecal transplants, which keeps out the dreaded F word. But it is it's been 93%, I think, effective in treating chronic infections with C. difficile, which is a bacteria that once it sets up housekeeping in the colon can be resistant to antibacterial treatment and causes miserable chronic diarrhea, weight loss, inability to keep food in you, and the fecal transplant, the cure is within a couple of days. People are having solid bowel movements, and it's fairly miraculous and not expensive, and hopefully there'll be other applications of this process. So it sounds
but the ick factor probably keeps it away from being used many times. So
the ick factor has been an issue, and also because it's just somebody's stool sample. There's no pharmaceutical company that's going to benefit. So there's nobody to pay for the trials to get FDA approval and to get the process into the medical healthcare system. So it's been hobbled by that as well as the ick factor. Yeah.
Well, in keeping in the same light here, the quintessential question that every married couple asks is, who passes more gas and which one stinks the most? So what is the answer?
Well, according to the work of Michael Levitt, who's published 34 papers on human intestinal gas, he says that women have a higher, on average, concentration of hydrogen sulfide than men. And hydrogen sulfide is the main culprit in the stink. So apparently, but to me, it's because it depends on what you're eating. Like red meat and cruciferous vegetables have a lot of the sulfur compounds. So to me, it seems like that would be more of a factor than whether you're a man or a woman. However, there is that fact that he put out there. And I think that this is offset by the larger average volume per passage that men have. In other words, men are more likely to let go of the big sort of gale force release that's going to make up for the fact that they may have a slightly lower concentration of the smelly stuff. So I think it's kind of a wash.
Yeah. Well, let's head on over to the king of rock and roll. Elvis Presley died at the age of 42 in 1977, and he was found on the floor of his bathroom, apparently after attempting to have a bowel movement. The official autopsy is sealed until 2027, but the coroner reported that the cause of death was a cardiac arrhythmia. What do you think were the series of events that took the life of the king?
Well, Presley had a long-standing problem with constipation. His colon was about 3 times the size of the average person of his build, and was occluded, blocked by about 2/3 of it was blocked up by very old, hardened material that was stuck there. So he had a tremendous problem evacuating, going to the bathroom, and once it would start to harden, it's very hard to get that stuff out of you. Yeah, he died straining on the toilet. You can set up this situation where you push so hard that it's a kind of a series of events that ends at a fatal heart arrhythmia. Defecation-associated sudden death is the medical term. And as to why he had this, it's a combination of he did a lot of prescription drugs, things that slow down the process of the gut and contribute to constipation. There's also some speculation he may have had a segment of paralyzed colon toward the, which could maybe he had undiagnosed Hirschsprung's, which is a disease where you don't have nerves along that very last stretch of the colon, so you can't sort of move stuff along. But at any rate, for whatever reason, he had a seriously stretched out, non-functioning, backed up, blocked tube, and that did him in.
Well, Mary, thank you so much for coming on the show. It's been very interesting, to say the least. Once again, the book is called Gulp, and you can find it in any major bookstore or on Amazon. And do you have a website, Mary?
Yeah, maryroach.net.
Thanks again.
Thank you so much.
Coming up next, employee wellness programs are popping up all over the country, and your job may be next. What do you need to know about them? Stay tuned and find out. And later, listen to my interview with actress Jennifer Beals on The Dr. A Show. Let me tell you about our Dr. A Show giveaway. As a thank you for listening to my show, we'll be giving away an iPod Nano at the end of this month. To enter, you simply need to log on to thedrashow.com and click on the Enter to Win button. Then like Dr. A on Facebook and enter your information. Now, at the end of this month, we will pick a winner at random and announce that winner on the air. So keep listening to hear your name. There's no purchase necessary to win. So again, that website is thedrashow.com.